For some unexplainable reason, we're all drawn to accounts of murder and serial killers. The best murders are those that are both horrible and weird. There's a good reason why horror movies and crime shows are consistently popular. The media coverage of serial killers and mass murderers often elicits emotions from fear and revulsion to morbid curiosity about their motivations. Watch till the end of the video to learn more about the cases that have been solved with the craziest plot twists you've ever heard. Priority 1. Robert Berdella. In the late 1980s, Robert Berdella, a serial killer dubbed the Butcher of Kansas, terrorized the state of Kansas. Robert Berdella murdered and tortured 6 men during his spree, then dismembered their bodies and stuffed them into dog food bags. Further, he meticulously documented the murders of all 6 victims, which helped authorities pin the murders on him. Neither would have been caught if his 7th victim hadn't escaped via a window on the 2nd level. Donald Harvey. No. 2. The Angel of Death. Donald Harvey worked as an orderly at Marymount Hospital in Kentucky during the 70s and 80s. 87 people were allegedly killed by him by either disconnecting them from life support or adding cyanide or arsenic to their intravenous fluids. He thought he was helping them by killing them, he said after he was caught. During an autopsy, one of Harvey's victims tested positive for cyanide, which led to his identification. Next, we have Gertrude Banaszewski. Sylvia Likens, a 16-year-old girl, was found dead in Gertrude's house in the mid-1960s in Indianapolis. She had been beaten and burned with cigarettes. When their parents had to travel for work, Sylvia and her younger sister stayed with their grandmother, Gertrude. Local children as young as 10 were enlisted to watch and join in on Sylvia's brutal treatment. Issei Sagawa. Number 4. Somehow, Issei has remained free and independent in Japan despite being widely recognized as a cannibal. While he came from a privileged background in Japan, he could never get his mind off of Western women. His initial foray into cannibalism was deemed an attempted rape since he targeted a German woman living in Japan. He bit off a chunk of her skin during the attack. The two became fast friends after he moved to France to complete his doctorate. Then, over 2 days, he shot her in the neck and devoured different parts of her body. After the French government ruled Issei Sagawa legally crazy, he was deported back to Japan after he was caught trying to dispose of her body parts. After Japanese officials judged he was competent to make his own decisions, he signed paperwork releasing him from the mental institute. Notable 5. Dennis Rader. Dennis Rader, alias the BTK Killer, was arrested in Wichita, Kansas, in 2005. He had been active in the criminal world since 1974. In some cases, Rader would even spend the night in his victims' homes before the attack. He'd follow them around for days before finally attacking. The most disturbing thing about him was his outwardly respectable appearance. He was an Air Force pilot with a family of his own. 6. Knight. Catherine. This murder investigation is one of the most unsettling on this whole list. Catherine Knight was the first woman in Australian history to be given a mandatory life sentence without the chance of parole. She stabbed her husband to death, skinned him, roasted him, and then set his body out on the dining room table with tags bearing their children's names. It's not this that I think will be the wildest turn in a murder case, though. The Papon sisters. No. 7. It's 1930s France, and these 2 sisters are working as maids. The sisters had been housekeepers for a retired lawyer for 6 years before the murder of the mother and daughter. The sisters reportedly gouged out their eyes and attacked them with knives, hammers, and other sharp objects. After the bodies were recovered, the police discovered the sisters in bed together. Dennis Nilsen. Number 8. Dennis Nilsen was a serial killer who terrorized London, England, in the 70s and 80s. He habitually picked up young men from nightclubs and brought them home. There, he'd either cause them to drown or strangle. After his victims died, he took care of their bodies for days or weeks. He'd have conversations and sexual encounters with the victims before he'd burn their bodies or flush their remains down the toilet. Well, folks, that does it for us. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future uploads. Have fun watching the next clip.